All right, guys. So disclaimer before I get into this video. This video is about public policy and public policy only. I am not making any claims about COVID, the pandemic. Everybody should, listen to the CDC and take care of yourselves and try to be safe. All right. So this interview between Kristi Noem and the host of Face the Nation, I forget her name, but this was a very interesting interview because Kristi Noem is a rising star in the Republican Party, right? Because her, along with Ron DeSantis, have kind of been the faces of the anti-lockdown movement, right? In the conservative party, because those governors are the ones who've kept their states open for business, okay? And have basically said, listen, we're going to let people decide for themselves what they want to do. We're not going to have the government impede on personal freedoms just to push our own agenda, okay? And that's the way they've governed. That's the way they went about their personal policy. They want to keep their states open. They don't want to disrupt life. They want to let people make their own decisions about how they feel about this virus and protecting themselves, okay? And to those conservatives who value, freedom and liberty, and not even just conservatives, just people in general who value freedom and liberty and trying to keep the government from overreaching, can definitely understand where these governors are coming from, right? In the sense that, listen, once the government takes an inch, they tend to go ahead and try to take that whole mile, right? And for these executives not to fall for that trap of trying to grab power, right? Like Cuomo, Newsom, and Gretchen Whitmer, right? I think is commendable. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the liberal media does. So the liberal media is going to try to come at Kristi Noem, right? And is going to try to call her out on South Dakota and her policy. So let's take a listen.
We're back with the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem. She's attending the Conservative Political Action Conference in Orlando, Florida. Good morning to you, Governor.
Good morning, Margaret. Thank you for having me.
We just heard from Dr. Fauci, who said it is too early to peel back health restrictions and do things like not have mask mandates. And I know you don't have one in your state. How do you want to respond to him?
Well, I'd like to respond to something that you said. You indicated that I ignored medical advice. I didn't listen to my health experts, and I most certainly did. In South Dakota, we took this virus very seriously. What I did, though, was tell my people the truth. I gave them personal responsibility over decisions for their family's public health, but also gave them the flexibility they needed to keep their businesses open, take care of their employees and their customers. So, I really do believe that as this virus has spread throughout the country, that people needed that flexibility. And South Dakota's doing well. We've had some tragic situations, but I know that respecting them and my role and the authority that I have as governor has been incredibly helpful to get our state get through this challenging time.
That was the perfect answer, bruh. Like, that is the model answer when the liberal media tries to question conservative governors for their decisions in regards to letting people live their lives and make their own decisions. She's basically saying, listen, I'm going to let people be people, okay? I'm going to let people take responsibility for the health of their own families, okay? I'm not going to overstep my boundaries as governor to try to tell them how to take care of themselves. Now, Kristi Noem also said, listen, I made all the information available. All the information from the CDC, everything that you need to know is available, right? You literally can go to the COVID website for the South Dakota state, and it has all the information you need there. It has everything about masks and social distancing and, washing your hands. It has all that stuff. It has a tracker for all the cases. It has all the information, right? It is very transparent that, hey, this is a serious thing. But at the end of the day, I'm going to let you guys handle it for yourselves. I'm going to let you guys, take care of your own families and to figure out what you want to do. If you want to go to church, that's on you. But I'm not going to impede your rights to worship, right? I'm not going to impede your ability to work. I'm not going to impede your ability to make money, okay? To take care of your families and have you become dependent on a federal government that has shown us that they can't even consistently get a stimulus package passed to keep people afloat. Okay? The federal government is not even dependable. You can't depend on the federal government for nothing. So why would I have my citizens, my constituents, shut down and lose their jobs to try to depend on the federal government when you can't depend on the federal government? We've seen that. So Kristi Noem's basically saying, listen, hey, at the end of the day, I'm being transparent, right? And I'm going to let people take personal responsibility, and I'm going to let the chips fall where they may, right? But at the end of the day, I did not infringe on people's freedoms in the process. And that's what really matters. And again, Justice Alito has talked about this a lot.
Well, we played that clip from your speech, and in that speech, you also said you never instituted a mask order, shut any churches or businesses, or even defined what an essential business is. As of today, the CDC says your state has the 8th highest death rate per capita in the U.S. That's a rate of deaths per 100,000 residents. Don't you think your decisions as an executive contributed?
South Dakota's infection rate peaked earlier than a lot of other places in the country, so we're definitely on the downward trend and peaked earlier than what you're seeing happen across the country as well. You can talk about masks, we can talk about mitigation measures, all of that.
These are CDC numbers as of today.
What I am against
and it was
is
the death
mandates
rate
that would tell people that what they have to do. I want people to make those decisions for themselves. And we've seen the CDC change recommendations over and over and over again. In fact, we've seen them do it just based on political pressure. We follow the science, the data, and the facts in South Dakota to make our decisions. And it's been incredibly helpful to make sure that we're taking care of people who need it when they get sick.
Bruh, oh my God. I really just love how she is sticking with her convictions here, right? She's sticking with her message of, listen, I'm going to let people do what they want, okay? I'm going to let people live their lives. I'm going to let people take care of themselves. I'm not going to define whose business is essential, right? Who am I as the government to tell somebody that their business is not essential? Because their business is essential to them and their families, right? Which is what most people care about. They care about themselves and their families. Okay, so I'm not going to overstep my boundaries, right? I'm not going to exert my authority over people, right? Just for political gain, right? Just to say, well, I'm being responsible as a government. Again, I don't see what's so bad about this message. It's not like she's telling people, to do the opposite of what's recommended. She's like, no, you should wear masks and you should social distance. You should wash your hands. You should do all this stuff. But I'm not going to force you to do it. I'm not going to put a mandate in place and force you to do something like that. It's up to the people to decide how they want to handle this. I don't understand what is the big issue with this. I really don't.
I was asking you about the death rate as of today, according to the CDC, not the infection rate, which you're talking about. But one of your fellow Republicans, West Virginia's Governor Jim Justice, held up your state as an example of what not to do when it comes to his decision to institute a mask mandate. He said, I don't want to be South Dakota. Why do you think your state got hit so hard?
Our state peaked earlier than other states, than his state, than New York, than California. They certainly are seeing much higher infection rates, much higher hospitalization rates, and much higher deaths today than we are. And that's really how we've seen this virus spread across the country. What I'd like to know, Margaret, is why are you asking Cuomo these questions? Are you talking to Newsom about these questions?
When
and how
both of those governors accept an invitation to come on this program, and I hope they do, Madam, I really hope they say yes, and I really appreciate that you did to our invitation. So that's why I'm asking you about your state. They have not said yes. So for your state, you have, if you look at starting in July, which was after that spring peak, you have the highest death rate in cumulative COVID deaths per million in the country. The CDC says you have the 8th highest death rate per capita now. I'm not talking about infection rates. I know you're a conservative and you care about the sanctity of life. So how can you justify making decisions that put the health of your constituents at risk?
And those are questions that you should be asking every other governor in this country as well.
I'm asking you today, Madam.
South Dakota's in.
You're facing the nation.
I'm answering you, Margaret. I'm answering you. Regionally, we have seen the virus hit the country very differently, and it hit the Midwest earlier than it did the South, and now the East Coast and the West Coast. So we are still dealing with this virus in this country. South Dakota went through our highest rate of infections and implications earlier. The rest of the country is dealing with it much higher numbers today. And that's really what this means. What we should be looking at is, did the mitigation measures help? Did mandating different actions in each of these states make a difference? Because what we're seeing is that the mandates aren't necessarily what's working. It's that people have the ability, the flexibility to not just look at this virus and how it hits their health, but also how does it impact their well-being, their economic well-being, their ability to keep their kids in school, their ability to keep their businesses open, pay their bills. That's been incredibly challenging.
Let's talk about that, because there's a $12 billion price tag that has been pegged to the impact of and fallout from that Sturgis motorcycle rally that you hosted in your state in August. It is blamed for seeding the entire Midwest outbreak that hit in that late summer through the fall. Do you take personal responsibility for that?
Well, that is completely false information. That is not true.
This is the San Diego State University study.
And it is not based on facts. We tracked people that came to the rally, had states report back to us cases that came from that rally. It was less than 100 cases that we could track to that, and we did testing in that community and throughout the area for weeks after. Listen, what we did was allow people to make decisions for themselves. We gave them all the information on this virus, how to protect their health, and then we allowed them to make decisions on what they would do. My question is, if we had mandated that people had to stay home, if we had mandated that businesses had to be closed, would that have made a difference? And I would argue that it wouldn't have, that we allowed people to make these decisions.
President Trump's COVID czar, Dr. Birx, said if those people who had attended Sturgis, if they'd gone home wearing masks, that it would have actually saved lives. She said that on this program. But how do you justify the death of your constituents, though? And when you talk about personal responsibility, which I know is a value you talk a lot about, when your personal choices put others at risk, isn't that the opposite of responsible?
See, the fallacy of this type of questioning here, and she thinks that she is getting Kristi Noem with gotchas. Right. Well, see, didn't you allow this motorcycle parade or whatever it was to happen, and this led to this and it led to that? Well, basically what Kristi Noem is saying is that, listen, what I'm doing is that I am not letting my personal feelings and decisions get in the way of what people want to do, because it has an impact on business and people's lives. Right. I don't want to come in between that, right? So if people want to gather around and if they want to do whatever they want to do, that's on them. That's on them. Okay? Right? But I don't want to define for people what personal responsibility is for them. Right? I think she's doing a good job of getting through this interview, because they are hitting her with some hard questions here. This ain't no easy interview. Okay? So let's take a listen at the rest of it here.
It's been an incredibly challenging year for so many people, and everyone across this country knows someone who we have lost to this virus. I think we need to examine the actions that we've taken and see if it has allowed people to make decisions and honored our rights and our freedoms in this country in a way that respects what makes America special. Making decisions in one state, Dr. Fauci just said, might be very different than what another state should be doing. That's how I looked at my state. I have one community that may need to make a different decision on what they'd like to do than another community that may be of a different size, be in a different area, or at a different infection rate or hospitalization rate. So that's why I gave them that flexibility. We took this virus very seriously, but I also let them look locally at what was the best actions to take to protect their health, but also keep their businesses open and protect the economy that they were dealing with.
All right, so that's basically the end of them talking about the pandemic. And when it comes to the polls, right, the last poll that I saw was basically from November, showed a 53.8% approval, right, of Kristi Noem in South Dakota. So, you know, at the end of the day, ultimately, it's going to come down to South Dakotans I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's going to come down to them to decide whether or not they approve of her performance. But the polls show that, at least half approve of what she's doing. Okay? So that's ultimately what matters. They approve of the fact that she's allowed the state to stay open and to keep going about business as usual. So, we'll see what happens with Kristi Noem and if she continues to rise in the GOP. I think that she will. She has said all the right things for the most part. So we'll see how it goes. Let me know what you guys think about this exchange. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.